Welcome to the Global Supply Chain Summit. I'm Weston LaBar, CEO of the Harbor Trucking Association. And with me today for this fireside chat is Jon Gold, Vice President of Supply Chain and Customs at the National Retail Federation. Thanks for joining, Jon.
Hey, Weston, good to see you.
So, Jon, we're here today to talk about everybody's favorite subject, the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach and the congestion in Southern California. I know that we've had an interesting ride since the beginning of 2020. Massive slowdown because of disrupted supply chains. Then the faucet got turned on full blast, and we've seen cargo flowing through this gateway until we didn't have enough room for the cargo to flow anymore. We've had massive challenges, some COVID related, some more systemic and structural. But maybe it would be great for us to start with you and talking about what your members are experiencing, because as we all know, it's the BCO that really makes the supply chain work. We work for you guys. So what are you guys hearing? What are you guys seeing? Tell us about what the BCO's experience is.
Sure. I mean, I think, as you noted, when you look at the start of the pandemic back in early, 2020, we went from the issue of, when am I getting my cargo to the issue of stores being closed down. And that certainly had an impact on the industry as a whole because the cargo volumes dropped, immensely at the start. And then as we started to see things open up again, the volumes have just spiked. And part of that is due to the ongoing consumer demand that we've seen from early summer throughout, and that demand continues. As a result, we're seeing the unprecedented congestion at the ports that has been there for months now that I don't think is going to subside anytime soon, because we still see the volumes being relatively high throughout at least the first part of this year. And, as you noted, the congestion just continues to be there. And I think my members are seeing it on a daily basis. They want to get their containers as soon as they can because they want to make sure they don't have empty shelves. They want to make sure that as the e-commerce orders continue to flow, they're able to get product to the consumer within a day or two or whenever they're supposed to get it. So, we're seeing ongoing issues that are impacting not just my members, but every other stakeholder who relies on the ports of LA and Long Beach to keep the commerce of the nation going.
Yeah, and Jon, I think that's a great point. I've told people at first it was playing catch up. I spoke to so many BCOs whose supply chains were so disrupted, and it was about refilling the store shelves. But as we went through the pandemic, obviously the big uptick in e-commerce, which we all knew was going to become more and more predominant in how people consume in America, the fact that they need to go essentially straight from the ship to the house as fast as possible has put even more stress on our supply chain. And what I've said to most people is this is going to continue as long as consumer spending habits stay strong and as long as e-commerce is the predominant form of consumption for American consumers. And what are your members saying? Because I'm hearing that this could continue through spring. From some stakeholders, I'm hearing this is going to continue through the summer, maybe into the fall, and then maybe right into a new peak season. I think it's a situation where we don't really know. COVID is still going to dictate a lot of it. And maybe some of it changes once people can go back out and spend money on non-retail based things like vacations and leisure activities. But what are you hearing from your members about volumes, and what are they doing? I think, Jon, more importantly, what's their plan B?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you noted, a lot of it is still the uncertainty, and folks are just trying to figure it out and plan as best they can. But as long as that consumer demand remains high, retailers are going to want to make sure they've got the product ready to go. And I think we're still looking at high demand throughout the first half, at least the first half of 2021. We just released our global port tracker the other day that shows that the demand is going to continue and the cargo volumes are going to continue at least through the first half of this year. And as you noted, that could dovetail right into the peak shipping season. We started peak earlier last year and it went longer. And that just might be the trend going forwards. There's so much uncertainty right now about how the market and the consumers are going to respond. And as you noted, it's all due to COVID. It's great that folks are starting to get the vaccines now. Hopefully in a few months, we'll see more and more of that. But there's just so much uncertainty that folks are trying to plan as best they can and be fully prepared, not just for the seasonal items that are continuously, on the shelves and coming in, but looking at the replenishment items as well, because that's a key part of this too. And as you noted, a lot of folks have shifted their buying away from the traditional in-store to e-commerce, and that's probably going to continue. Our members at the onset of the pandemic, you look at all the innovation they put in place to make sure they're dealing with the pandemic. I mean, we've seen 5 years worth of innovation within the first 5 months of that pandemic, with the shift to e-commerce, things like buy online, pick up in store, all those changes that had to be made within the supply chain that will continue. But it's an ongoing effort. I think retailers are continuing to evaluate their supply chains to look at minimizing risk, which there certainly was a lot of that throughout the pandemic. But that's a big part of this. And the issue of the supply chain really has reached the C-suite like we haven't seen it before. Every couple of years when we have disruptions at the ports for one reason or another, it'll be front and center. But really, as a result of COVID and folks looking at the supply chain as a whole, the C-suite is more interested in how the operation works now than they ever have been before.
Yeah, and it's great that we're finally getting the attention of folks that high, because I think that's really what's going to help change some of the structural and systemic issues that we've seen over the last several years, really since the shipping alliances became more predominant in the industry. It's interesting because with e-commerce, we've had this evolution that's been slow, but I think is rapidly starting to be part of the norm, which is a shift from that supply chain to more of a demand chain. Less about where is it coming from and more about how do we get it to its final destination, the consumer, as quickly, efficiently, and inexpensively as possible. And those three things are not always easy to do. And hopefully we'll be able to get some workers in our industry vaccinated so we can help get these goods out. But maybe it would be a good time to shift to what some of the causes are, right? I know in speaking with our members, we still have many issues around appointment systems, which probably some of the implementations of things like empty appointments and export appointments and things of that nature, it's not the right time to do it when you see massive cargo surges. We've worked tirelessly with terminals, and I think over the course of 2020 and into 2021, we did see a lot of enhancements. There's a huge disjointment between the ocean carriers and their terminal agents. So when they are telling a terminal what they need from them, many times they're not letting the terminal operator, the BCO, the trucker know where empties can go back so we can better plan for dual transactions, things of that nature. So technology's got to be a big part of it. But at the root of it all, I really think we have a labor issue. And part of it is structural, systemic. That's going to be a theme of this. These are issues that we've had. I love how people try to say, well, this is a COVID situation, but these are issues that I've seen every year over the last 7 years of being CEO of the HTA. We've had a once in a lifetime disruption that's completely fragmented the supply chain to different degrees. Can you talk a little bit about what your members are seeing, the ability to get their cargo out? Because after this, I want to go into a little about the detention and demurrage aspect, but let's first talk about the root cause of what are the hurdles that they're seeing at the terminals.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, this is not a new issue, what we're seeing at the terminals. Obviously, it's the issue on steroids that we haven't seen previously, but this is the what you and I have been working on for years now, is looking at a more holistic 21st century port system that we all know that we need. And the ports have a critical role in the commerce of the United States, and we all recognize that. But we can't keep doing things the way we've always done it, because the system has changed. Whether it's the bigger vessels, the increased volumes that are coming in, we've got to figure out a way to better handle the system going forwards. And we've got to look at this from a holistic approach as well, from load overseas through to the warehouse and distribution center. And we currently aren't seeing that. And as you noted, the technology and visibility is a huge piece of this that we've been pushing for a long time. You need that to do the better planning and forecasting going forwards. So, our members right now are facing difficulty in getting the cargo they need, and for a variety of reasons, and everything that you kind of laid out. The lack of availability of appointments, the dual transactions that I know you guys are on the front lines of trying to meet. If you can't drop off an empty and use the chassis, how are you going to pick up a loaded container? And if you have to go from terminal to terminal, how do you do that appropriately? So, there are a wide variety of issues that we need to work through, but it's not stuff that we haven't talked about previously. It's I feel like you and I and others just keep talking and talking and talking, and we're not seeing the progress we need to. And we put forward suggestions in the past. I applaud what Gene and Mario have been trying to do and bring folks together, but we've got to really take action now, and it's time to really kind of focus on how do we improve the system, because every couple of years we get an issue, and we got to figure out how do we avoid getting to the issue in the first place.
Absolutely. We need to look at things like workforce development. We need to have a national freight portal that helps bring data together, standardize it, and make it consumable for all the stakeholders. These are things that we've been talking about for years. And a big reason of it is because we have detention and demurrage charges that continue to rack up every time we have one of these issues. I've mentioned to you and to other folks, we just started our own BCO program where we're trying to get key metrics and KPIs to our BCO customers that use the ports of LA Long Beach, things like turn times, gate schedules, chassis availability. And I have more and more BCOs, probably multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day, reach out and say, I can't get this container out. I'm going to have to shut down my production lines. What can you do to help me? The good news is typically when you call the management at a terminal, you're able to get through and they will help you get those key containers out. The problem is the majority of folks are calling customer service people that are told, sorry, keep checking for appointments. And that's a difficult way to do business. I bring this up because obviously detention and demurrage, I think, is it's the biggest issue, I believe, in the industry right now. As you said, we can't do things the same way we used to. The policies that govern our industry do not mirror the way that the industry operates. And so we need to figure out ways to not allow detention and demurrage to be a profit center for certain stakeholders, but to be that incentive again to move cargo, which I think most cargo owners want their containers as quickly as possible. Can you talk a little bit about what the impact has been on your members? Because I hear horror stories about transportation budgets being exhausted within the first quarter of the year already, all on detention and demurrage. So, Jon, what are your members telling you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first and foremost, I think we all agree that detention demurrage has a role in the industry as that incentive for folks to move cargo. But folks are already incentivized to move cargo as soon as they can because they want it on the store shelves. They need it at the factories. They need it for whatever purposes. So any delay in moving that cargo costs folks money. And that is not something that members, especially now in light of COVID and the impact on budgets, want to see. So, I hear continuously from my members about, why am I getting these charges when I want to pick up my cargo, but I can't for reasons that we've talked about at the ports. Appointment's not available. The terminal's all of a sudden closed and I can't get to it. And I can't schedule another appointment for 5 days, which is outside of the free time that I'm allowed. So, we went through the process working with the FMC. There have been, investigations looking at the issue of detention demurrage. FMC came to an agreement. Yeah, there's an issue here. And they put forward the interpretive rule that we thought was a good first step to provide guidance on when detention demurrage should be put in place. And it really depends on container availability. When is a container actually available? And right now, containers just aren't available for a variety of reasons. So, right now, as you noted, the significant cost that my members and others are paying for D&D is significant. And right now is not a time when we need to see these additional charges, especially as you've got companies that are trying to just survive economically. And that's mostly on the small and medium-sized guys that are, don't have those huge transportation budgets. But, I'm hearing not just from my members on the issue, but hearing from a wide variety of other stakeholders as well, other industries, autos, chemical distributors, and a wide variety of others that are saying, what can we do about this? Why do we keep getting these charges? I thought we addressed the situation with what the FMC put in place.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point because so many folks saw the interpretive rule come out. I thought that was spot on. It's exactly what we should be looking at with forward-thinking public policy. Unfortunately, the Federal Maritime Commission only has specific powers and they're not able to regulate the way that I think many in the industry would like them to. And the irony is, trucking is one of the most regulated industries in the entire country. In California, most regulated industry other than cannabis. And cannabis decided to be regulated so they could be legitimate businesses. So when we look at regulations, we really don't go to the well to say, can you help us regulate our industry unless we're in dire straits? So taking it from an interpretive rule, I know we've talked about what needs to happen next. Things like modernizing the Shipping Act, which hasn't been touched since 1995. modernizing the Uniform Intermodal Interchange Agreement to actually bring stakeholders like marine terminals to the table, so you don't get a which way did he go type answer on empty returns and appointments. What do you think are the next most important steps as it relates to solving this issue? Because it seems to me you have two schools of thoughts. One is you need to solve it commercially, and the other is you need to solve it through public policy. And I would argue that if we could solve it commercially, we would have already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think the two tracks are right. I think certainly the commercial discussion is going to continue, and obviously coming out of the pandemic, we're getting into contracting season. I know a lot of these issues are going to be front and center for these contracts, and it's not just the operations at the terminal, but it's what's happening on the vessels as well, and the rates and things like that. So it's all going to be critical going forwards. But I think it's time we really look at a 21st century supply chain policy where we look at how our ports are actually working. Trade has changed over the past 20 plus years since we looked at the Shipping Act, and I think there are a lot of things that we need to take into consideration and take a hard look at how it works, and do we actually have a policy in place that helps our ports to deal with the issues that we're dealing with today. Technology, as you noted, is going to be a part of that. Transparency, information sharing is all going to be critical, but we've got to bring all the partners to the table who are willing to do this. We just can't keep doing the same thing we've done all the time, because that's how we've done it in the past. The past doesn't work anymore. It's time to update and innovate and move forwards.
Yeah. And so before we close out, maybe we can end on the forward looking, right? And so I know I've spoken with terminal operators who've said, we don't build the church for Easter Sunday. And my response has been, you do if you want your congregation to be like it is on Easter Sunday throughout the year. And I think that LA Long Beach has said, we're open for business. I know what my members say, we're open for business. And then when the floodgates open, can we really handle all the business that's coming here? From our perspective, the big concerns are around, environmental policies, labor policies, really the California policies, if you will. For your members, I know there was a four-corner strategy that was really being implemented. Then with COVID, it became a mad dash towards LA Long Beach. What do you see, and what do your members see as the biggest threats and opportunities as it relates to LA Long Beach moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that four-corner strategy continues today, especially as BCOs are looking at their supply chain as a whole and trying to mitigate as much risk as possible. Obviously, beyond just the port congestion issues we're seeing in California, there are a lot of other California issues that our guys are looking at. You've got proposals for a new clean truck program impacting the port that we're still trying to figure out how and when that's going to go into effect. You've got a new, indirect source rule that's being talked about that's going to impact warehousing. So, a lot of these issues are going to have an impact on the bottom line and how things operate. So, those are just a small number of the issues, but the overall business situation in California is one that our guys are continuously look at and see what's the threat and what's the opportunity. So, we want to continue to work with regulators. I think we all agree clean air is something we need to work towards, but how do we do it in conjunction, working with each other to make sure we don't have burdens in place that are going to drive your members out of business, that are going to impact my members' ability to move their cargo and create further congestion and other operational issues at the ports.
Yeah, I've said that the best climate change policy is to attract as much business as you can to California because we have the cleanest ports. And taking our ports and trying to make them even cleaner while cargo is just going to go to other gateways that don't have the same sustainability goals, it's a local air quality goal. That's not a climate change agenda, and we need to change that. But Jon, I want to thank you for joining us here today. This was a tremendous fireside chat. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Best way over email, goldj@nrf.com. I seem to be on email 24/7 these days, like you. So, look forward to any conversation with folks.
Yeah, and if you want to get a hold of me, it's Weston, Weston, @harbortrucker.com. And please follow the Harbor Trucking Association on our social media outlets. We try to keep up to the minute details of what's going on, the chronicles, trials, and tribulations of the ports on the West Coast. And we hope that you'll join the HTA for some of our upcoming programs on the issues that we're facing and how we can solve them collaboratively.